folks, here we are. We are entering the home stretch now. Thank y'all for hanging in there with me. I know that this has taken a while and a few episodes, but I thought it was important to review where we have been and where we are going. And it was good for me too. I had forgotten many of the things that happened in the past. A good, for instance, would be the whole story of Laerdan. I'd forgotten that he had showed up in Gathforthnir way back whenever we first crossed through the Waterstones and were first beginning our fight against Amarthael. I had forgotten that he had showed up that far back in the story. So good to know and good to have a review there. So let's see if we can continue on and get books 13, 14, and 15 out of the way. With the failure of the Council of Narquil, Elrond is concerned about what Laerdan's plans may be next, and believes that he may behave rashly. However, he states that he is not a prisoner in his house, so he will not keep him from going where he may. He does send us, however, to talk to him, and to see if we can counsel him to perhaps progress a little less rashly in his anger. Laerdan is in his quarters on the first floor of the last homely house, and he asks that we go to Forakel. He says that he believes that the other half of the ring was not lost in the shipwreck there, and that he wishes for us to go and start the search for him, as he says he feels that right now he could not leave Rivendell in good conscience, that he must make amends first. As he says, he has a feeling that when he leaves Rivendell, it will be for the last time, and he feels that he would like to leave on better terms. We leave the Valley of Rivendell, and traveling back westward through the lands that we have adventured in so many times before, we make the long journey far to the north to the ice fields of Forakel. And traveling through Forakel to the very northern edge to the city of Surikaila. There we are met by the king's representative, a northerner member of the Lothseth named Lassie. He says the king will meet with us if we can prove that we are worthy, so we have to complete tasks that he gives us, proving our strength, our endurance, and our wisdom. Finally, we are allowed before Iryana, the council tribe elder and leader of this group of the Lothseth. He states that while he respects our attributes, that there is another who wishes to speak to us too, and has a deal for us, and that he wishes for us to attend this meeting. We follow him out into a sudden strange storm that seems to have blown up out of nowhere, and who should we meet in the middle of the storm but our old friend Mordrembor, the Black Númenorian. Mordrembor seeks to attain the aid of the Lothseth, first through honeyed lies and promises, and then through threat whenever the lies do not seem to be doing the job. Iryana says that he will not deal with the enemies of his people or with the enemies of his guests. Iryana states that while he will not have dealings with Mordrembor, he also cannot aid us, as the Lothseth do not have the power to stand against Mordrembor. But he says that there is one who may. He sends us to see a seer, a wise woman named Seya, who lives on the far side of the Forakel Bay. Finding her in her icy cave, she tells us the story of Arvidu, the last king, who fled from the forces of Angmar north into Forakel, seeking refuge from his enemies. She states that a great sea monster came into the bay, carrying elves upon its back, and despite the advice of the Lothseth that the king Arvidu went down upon the beast with the elves, and that a storm brew up and destroyed the sea monster and drowned all who were aboard it. And, she says, the body still lies in the icy bay if we wish to go down and see if any clues to our quest might lie there. Traveling out into the frozen bay, we find a great elven ship stuck in the ice, its spine and its hull having been rent asunder by the grinding floes that have trapped it here for so many years. We find to our surprise, however, that it is not wholly abandoned, as the shade of Arvidu, the last king, remains trapped here, a victim of a foolish oath and his own pride. He asks us if we might assist him in lifting the curse that he has laid upon his own head, and that he may eventually find his own peace. He sends us first to a dwarven outpost to the south, in whose mines he and the survivors from the Battle of Fornost first sought refuge. Within those mines, we find dour hands looting and mining. In addition, we were able to find far in the back the remains of the Dunedain camp, with frozen bodies lost in time scattered about it. There we find a book of heraldry that he wishes for us to take and eventually return to his ancestors, in this case, Aragorn. Arvidu tells us that part of his guilt lies in the fact that this was not the only elven ship lost. A second one came the next year looking for the first, and it too was trapped in a storm in the ice. However, he states that he does not believe all the elves perished in that one, and that we should seek out the seer, Seja, and find out if she knows what may have happened to them. Seja tells us that before she will help us, we must prove our loyalty to her, and she sends us to the southwest where a canyon of ice giants dwells, in order to thin their numbers, and then to the northeast where an ancient dwarven fortress houses a collection of wights and evil spirits, both of whom, she says, provide great threat to the Lossith and must be removed. Having proved ourselves to her, she states that when the second ship of elves was lost, not all of the crew died in the shipwreck, but that some continued traveling south, attempting to make their way back to their lands. They were able to track them as far as to one of the ice caves in the southern mountains before they lost the trail due to the entrance being frozen over. She leads us to this cave, where we find Mordrembor and the Angmarum searching for the other half of Narquil. Mordrembor tells us that he is looking for the ring for himself, and that we are foolish to try and stop him, and that he will use the reforged Narquil to gain power in Angmar. We are able to track him deep into the cave until finally, confronting him in single combat, we are nearly defeated and stunned, when suddenly Seja transforms, revealing herself to be a Marthiel in disguise. We can only assume that, just as with Sarah Oakheart, she has done away with the real Lossith seer and taken on her guise. She berates Mordrembor for his treachery, states that he was a fool to think that she would allow him to go to Forkel unwatched, and chases him herself further into the caves. With the two leaders of Angmar off fighting amongst themselves, we are able to find a small cave off from the main cavern. Here we find the sad remains of the lost elven party, and in an ancient chest the second half of the ring Narquil. Returning to Arvidu, he asks that we make haste to travel back to Rivendell and return the ring to Elrond.
With the aid of his rescuers, the elf Lyrden was able to recover half of the ring Narquil in Angmar. Soon after, the location of the remaining half was discovered in the icy wastes of Forochel, though the minions of Angmar were close at hand. Now the ring must be returned to Rivendell before Angmar and Amarthiel can recover their full strength.
Back in Rivendell, we tell Aragorn the sad tale of his ancestor. He states that at some point in time we shall have a long talk about the events that have transpired there, but says that at the moment Laerdan waits for us in his quarters and has asked that we be sent as soon as possible. Laerdan tells us that he has come to the realization that Narquil will be of no aid to him reforged, and that it must instead be destroyed. He states that he will take it to the ring forges of Eregion, where it was created and the only place that it might be unmade. He tells us, however, that before he goes, he has some preparations that need to be made for the long journey. He sends us on a bit of a scavenger hunt, first to Rivendell, to the Halls of Fire, where he tells the cooks he will need provisions for the journey. Then he sends us to Tinadir in Evendim, where his horse has been stabled there in the care of Calenglad. And last, he sends us back to Angmar, to Gath Forthnir, to Goladir, where he asks that he will send back his breastplate. No quest in an MMO is ever as easy as just asking a person and being handed what you need, of course. So for the cook, we have to retrieve fine honey. For the stable master, we have to find new horseshoes. And most difficult of all, for Goladir, he says that the breastplate is not in Gathforthnir, but that we can check in a cave to the south in Imlad Balcorth, the Undead Lands, where they first took refuge whenever they had passed through the Wall of Watching Stones. After many surprisingly difficult battles within the cave, we come across a gaunt man, minion of shadow in the far rear reaches of the cave, Golgur. Upon finally defeating him, we are able to return to Rivendell with our missions complete. However, there we find that just like what happened in Evendim, Laerdan has once again given us the slip. He has left us a note outside of the guest chambers saying that the tasks that he had given us were but a diversion, and that he has already left to head down to Eregion with the halves of Narquil, and that reforging the ring is the only way that he will be able to recover his daughter. Elrond is shocked at the news, believing that this is evidence that his mind must have been broken while he was under torture in Angmar. He sends us to his stable master to find out how far ahead of a head start Laerdan has on us. Landrican, the stable master, says that Laerdan came to him for a horse 2 days ago. Elrond gives us permission to search Laerdan's room. Within, we find a number of items that he apparently left behind in his haste, including his journal. Within it, we find a terrible account of his memories of the tortures he underwent at Samath Ball, including Amarthael using her guise as Narmalath to extract a promise from Laerdan that he would bring the ring to her in order to cure her. We learn that, far away from our aid, Laerdan did indeed make the trip to Eregion, and there is once again betrayed by Amarthael. And though he puts up a great fight, eventually he is overcome by the Angmarim and taken prisoner once more. Elrond grieves at the fate of Laerdan, but states that our more pressing concern is keeping Amarthael from reforging Narquil. He sends us to find Eglaimir, a elf who was present in Eregion back in the days when the rings were being forged. He says if he can be found anywhere, he would be at Celondim, preparing to take the ride to the Grey Havens. Eglaimir states that to reforge such a ring, one would need a tool such as was used in the days of old. He says that Celebrimbor once gave such a tool to a man friend of his, and that it was probably buried with him upon his death, as is the custom of humans. We travel back to the lands of Bree and into the Barrow Downs, where we find the tomb of Maenadar the craftsman. Within it, we have a long and painful journey through many, many wights and arrow hounds and corpse candles till we finally reach the inner crypt and have to fight the gaunt plague bearer who guards the tomb. With his defeat, we find that the crypt has been recently disturbed and any tool that it held within has been taken. Returning to Kellendem, we tell Eglaimir the news. He tells us that this is most unfortunate. However, one thing remains. The bellows in Eregion would have to be rotted by now. He believes the only thing that the Angmarim could use to repair it would be a dragon hide, and he has heard tales that a lesser drake may still roam the waste of Forakel. Traveling back to Surikaila, we talk to the village elder who tells us that the beast Bregmor once roamed these lands but has not been seen for many a long year. He says if we wish, his lair was once to be found in the far west and that we may travel there and see for ourselves. We find Bregmor's den to be full of the Garadane allies of the Angmarim. Fighting our way through them and the various frostworms, we make our way back to the deepest part of the lair, where we find we are too late. The battle that we have been listening to as we progress through the cave is over. Bregmor has been slain by Mordrembor and his Garadane allies. His hide has been taken to remake the bellows at the forges of Eregion, where the ring will be forged anew. Mordrembor leaves, and we fight our way back out of the cave through the Garadane warriors who remain. We take the evil news to Lord Elrond in Rivendell. He is surprised to find that Mordrembor once more is working for Marthiel despite his betrayal. He says that with the two halves of the ring and the hide to reforge the barrows, there's nothing that will now stop Marthiel from recreating Narquil. He says that we must travel to Mirabel, far to the south in Eregion, and try to stop her from doing this task. We travel to the south, following the very footsteps of Laerdan until we reach the ruined elf city of Mirabel, and across the river from it, the academies and the forges of Tham Mardain, where once the elves studied ringcraft, under the tutelage of Lord Sauron. We find Tham Mardain overrun by Angmarim, sorcerers, priestesses, guards, and various other foul beasts in the service of Amarthiel. We have to fight our way through many a long battle until we can reach the actual forges themselves. We are too late, however. We find them already alight, and standing at their peak, we find Amarthiel, bearing the ring Narquil, reforged anew. A mighty battle is fought, and great is our effort, but to no avail. Amarthiel, wielding the power of Narquil, is too powerful for us, and we are facing defeat at her hands when suddenly we are ironically saved by the return of Mordrembor. He calls Amarthiel forth and tells her that the true Lord of Angmar wishes her presence and for her to follow him outside. Amarthiel thinks that Mordrembor means himself, but outside she finds that Mordorith has returned, and that he states that the Lord of the Nazgul is most displeased with how she has been running his kingdom, and wishes for Mordorith to take it back under his stewardship. A mighty magical duel is fought between the two of them, but powerful though Amarthiel is, she is no match for the power that flows through Mordorith, and she is cast down. Mordrembor cuts the ring from her hand and moves to slay her when Laerdan appears, seeking to avenge his daughter. Mordrembor slays him, and Mordorith decides that a more fitting punishment for Amarthiel is to have her stripped of all her power and her father, and for her to live on in her failure.
All that she desired seemed within her grasp, yet her father's betrayal of the free peoples was rewarded with the betrayal against her. Mordorith has returned, and Eriador stands on the brink of conquest by the forces of Angmar. As for Amarthiel, what future awaits her? Her fate is uncertain.
We return with news of the events to Lord Elrond, who says the fate of the North hangs by a thread. He asks us to go to Lord Glorfindel, as Narmeleth now states that she is free from the curse of Amarthael, and he wishes to seek Glorfindel's counsel on whether this may be true. Glorfindel tells us that Narmeleth is being held in Delisad, where Laerdan had imprisoned her during his attempts to cure her for so long a time. He wishes us to travel there and to question her and find out whether or not she may indeed be Narmeleth, but he warns us to be careful and to watch for trickery in her words. Narmeleth states that she is indeed free of the curse of Amarthael, although she does not question anyone doubting her. As a sign of her cure, she tells us that while she was in Angmar, she heard of a hidden refuge of the Rangers called Estelden in the North Downs, and that even now Angmar's spies were moving against it. We are able to travel to Estelden and to find the spy. Returning to Delisad, Narmeleth decides to tell us the story of how Amarthael came to be. Through her memories, we travel back in time to a period when Eregion was once a powerful elven nation, and along came a person named Antheron, the Gift Lord, who taught them the ways of ring lore. It was, in fact, Sauron in one of his fair disguises. Narmeleth was essentially then a rebellious teenager who decided that she was going to with Antheron despite the wishes of her father. Antheron took her, taught her ring lore, she created Narquil, and with its power and the power of Lord Sauron, was then twisted into becoming the being Amarthael. Glorfindel questions her at length until he is convinced that she is indeed Narmeleth now, and that she truly does wish to help us in fighting against the shadow of the North and to help right some of the wrongs that she has committed. With Narmeleth placed into our care, we travel back to Angmar and Gath-Forthnir. Goladir cannot believe that the creature Narmeleth has been allowed to return into his very fortress after all the harm that she has caused him. Narmeleth has the plan that if we can retrieve the sword Dunakar that once struck down Mordorith, that its power would be enough to help defeat him a second time. Goladir states that he will not help us, but that if we wish to retrieve it, it is on the grave of his daughter, where they laid her in the southern reaches of Angmar. After a long search, we find the sad and lonely grave of Lorniel, and Dunakar, which serves as a headstone for her. We retrieve the hilt of the sword and take it back to Narmeleth. She takes it and says that she believes her plan will work, and that it is time to make our final stand against the dark steward of Angmar, Mordorith. We travel to the dark tower of Gador Gularath, where Mordorith keeps his fell-winged beast stabled. We fight our way through all the minions that infest the tower, from the bottommost levels of the fire orcs through the evil spirits residing through the central levels. Finally, in a great circle of lava and fire, we confront Mordrembor once more, this time striking him down once and for all. Narmeleth approaches, picks up the ring, speaks of all the power and glory she sought as Amarthael, and throws it into the lava, destroying it forever. With the ring Narquil destroyed, only one task remains, and we battle our way to the very pinnacle of the tower, lying open to the sky to confront Mordorith himself. Mordorith throws illusion after illusion our way that we must defeat, until finally Narmeleth calls for him to come forth and to face her himself. Mordorith comes and strikes her down through an act of treachery. He tells her that here her quest ends, a failure, and that Amarthael shall be remembered forever and she shall be forgotten. However, she strikes never and slams the shards of Dunakar, the Avenger of the West, into him, ending his reign of terror over Angmar forever, before she finally succumbs to her wounds herself and allows her spirit to flee the body.
Beguiled by Sauron into crafting the ring Narkwheel, Narmeleth fell into madness, allowing the spirit of Amathiel to overcome her. The death of her father, Lérden, freed her mind, and once more as Narmeleth, she led the free peoples against the steward of Angmar. But in the end, her redemption required her life.
And there does the first part of our story come to an end. 303 episodes. What a long route it has been. Hope you have enjoyed it. Hope you have enjoyed this recap of the story of the Shadows of Angmar. And I thought it was fitting that we end here underneath the portrait of Narmeleth, a portrait of an elf maiden in far better days before the corruption of Sauron came upon her. Next time, we will be starting a new story, we'll be starting a new playlist, and we will be starting a new volume, Volume 2, The Mines of Moria, as Gnarlo travels south through Eregion to the fabled ancient city of the dwarves. So we will see you then. Hope you have enjoyed our little journey here. Thank you for watching, as always, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.